podcast, Beyond Balance. I'm super excited because we are live streaming to Facebook today with my friend Tara Antler. Like, you guys have to meet this woman, okay? I feel really blessed. Actually, you know what? I'm strategic. Let's be honest. I put myself in positions to be around really high quality human beings in this world. I pay for really high quality mentorship and high level mentorship, masterminding. And in one of my masterminds this year, I met Tara and have watched her and her husband Gabriel just absolutely explode their business right now because it is necessary in this world. Tara and I are like-minded. We are here to wake people up and help them transition to a brighter and more joyful future for themselves. And she does that so beautifully. She was also just in Mexico hosting a retreat in Bacalar, which is a place that I would very much like to visit. And I'm going to be at that retreat next time you do one of those. And so I'd like to introduce Tara, and I am going to give her an opportunity to tell her story and how she ended up here. But just honor this woman for what she does in the world, for who she helps, for how she helps, because what she does is necessary right now. We're in a very interesting time in the world where people are waking up and starting to evolve and bring in a new consciousness into their lives. And she has a beautiful, safe space for people to grow that consciousness, and when we talk about consciousness, we'll evolve into that conversation, right? But also, to live life in alignment with who they are and who they're meant to be. So we very much are on the same path and a little bit of a different realm. But man, Tara, I'm so excited to have you here today and to share your story and just to have a conversation with you about how you help people and what you and Gabriel are up to, because I think it's phenomenal. And so you're up in Ontario, right? Up in Canada?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here. And yeah, we're up in Ontario, Northern Ontario. It's beautiful, blue skies. We're just saying like proper clouds. It's hot and it's sweaty and it's a normal summer day in Northern Ontario. And it feels so good. It feels so refreshing. And I'm so grateful to be here with you and to see your community. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And, it's so interesting because we were just talking about the smoke and the fires and everything that the US is dealing with right now. And one of the things that I have really brought to the forefront of my daily practice is gratitude, right? Yeah. Gratitude for every little moment. And there are moments, by the way, like when you move to another country, it is not always easy. There are always going to be challenges and things that come up. But the gratitude that I have daily for living in a place where most people just get to vacation once a year or maybe once in a lifetime is pretty epic. And so, Tara, you guys have created very consciously a life for you and your family. And you are also helping other people create a conscious life for them and their family. So how did you even get into this space? Like, what brought you down this path of building the Ascension Academy of Light? What landed you here?
Yeah, I really feel like that was a soul-directed thing right out of the womb. No joke, because from the time, like some of my first memories, I remember talking to animal spirits and talking to fairies and seeing things that other people were like, that's not there, that's your imagination. And I'm like, why? Like, I don't know. I didn't get it, And of course, back then, I didn't have anybody to talk to. In the late 70s, early 80s, no one was talking about this sort of thing. Nobody was talking about meditation and yoga or energy or Reiki or any of that stuff. Chakras, what's a chakra? Nobody was talking about this stuff, right? And it wasn't until grade 9, I had this incredible English teacher. And he said to us, I want you to do an independent study project. You could pick any subject you want. And a couple weeks prior to that, he happened to just mention in passing in one of his classes that he had been in California and he was at this retreat and they were doing yoga and meditation and a guy levitated beside him. And I'm like, what now? I'm like, people can levitate? I was like, I always knew that to be true. You're the first person who's actually reaffirmed that to me. And so I went up to him afterwards and I said, I got to ask you, because he kept kind of dropping these things about energy and Qigong and things like that, right? And meditation. And I said, do you have any books on this subject? Because I'd really like to do an independent study on it. I went to the library. There are no books on this. And he said, actually, I do have some books. And so the next day he brought me 3 books that I still have to this day. One was on reflexology. One was on energy, mainly Qigong. And the other one was on yoga and meditation. And I devoured these books. I took them in. I wrote the best, still to this day, even surpassing university. I think it was the best book report, independent study project I have ever, because I put my whole heart and soul into it. It was exactly what I was looking for. And I remember after that, like, he was amazed by what I had created and reflected back. And he said, I can't remember the exact words, but it was somewhere along the lines of, you don't necessarily have to follow the regular path. He said, if this is something that calls to you, follow that. He said, there's something unique about the reason why you're called to this. You need to follow that.
Wow.
And that stuck with me. And it really got the ball rolling. So I sat, in Northern Ontario here on the rock, we call it the rock, overlooking the Ottawa River. And I would sit and I taught myself how to meditate and do yoga. And I remember the first time I sat in stillness, like really sat in the stillness, I felt everything around got really calm. The birds got calm. The trees got calm. The river got calm. And then I felt this presence behind me and like hands on my back move me forward. And I was like, okay, somebody's here playing a joke at me. Like my brother's trying to joke me. Someone's trying to do something. Right? And there was nobody but me and energy. And that got my mind opening to a whole other level. So I feel like for me, it's been there from the very beginning. Even in university, I was looking, right? I'm thinking, do I become a doctor, a nurse, a physiotherapist? That's what I thought I would become, a massage therapist. And something was missing. The entire time, something was missing. And then in third year, there was this incredible class called Alternative and Complementary Medicine. And of course, from holistic health science, or from the health sciences viewpoint, they're trying to debunk it. They're like, this is a fraud. This is fake. How can we debunk this? And for me, I had so much respect because they had all these different practitioners coming in, talking about chiropractic, energy work, chakras, Reiki. And I was like, oh my God, how can I find more of this? Because if I can find a school that I can learn how to do this, I will be the happiest kid for the rest of my life. And that was more than 20 years ago now already, since I graduated university. And I can honestly say every single day now, I've had challenges I've had to go through, but when it comes to like, when people talk finding their purpose and the work that they're here to do, I feel so grateful. You talk about gratitude. I feel so grateful every single day that this was put on my path. I didn't even go searching for it. It was literally put on my path. And I'm so grateful because every day has been such a joyful experience and so many twists and turns and ways to be able to support people. I wouldn't change a thing.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And for you to have somebody like your English teacher, somebody that recognized a gift in you, somebody that believed in you, like it's one thing for your parents to do it. Like, let's be honest.
Right.
It's one thing for your parents to support you, encourage you, discipline you, do all the things, right? But when you have an outside source come in and see a light in you, I can tell you, I have less than 5 of those people in my life, that have come in and have made a significant impact in who I've become because they had this belief, right? They had this belief in me. And that's the gift that I've been able to pass forward to other people, is this gift of belief and this gift of knowing and finding purpose. Like we do the same thing on different like not actually on the same parallel, but just in different genres, right? And it's funny because you remember that moment that you just like, what? You can do that? And mine was an income thing because I came from a middle-class family. I always wanted to I had these big dreams. Like, so for anybody that's listening to this, like you had it in your heart from day one, right? I always knew I was meant to be more, but that sounds like a bit conceited, right? Like it sounds like a bit like, I know I'm meant to do more than just this. And it was never meant to come across that way. There was just this loud calling inside of me, whether that is intuition or the Holy Spirit, however you see that. For me, I relate it back to the Holy Spirit now because I'm like, wow, that's where that piece came from that I fought for so long, because a lot of us will block that intuition, whereas you learned at a very young age, because you had the right guidance and right mentorship, how to lean into that intuition and how to use it for good instead of, because a lot of people and this is why I want to bring it up, is because a lot of people with intuition and with influence will, influence people in whatever benefits them the most. But I have seen you personally come into this space and you're there to influence others to become their best human, their best self, right? And so talk a little bit about what you do with the Ascension Academy of Light and with Gabriel.
Yeah. So Gabriel and I joined our businesses together after we found out we were having twins. So we already had Aria, our daughter, and she was a year and a half, I think, maybe 2 when we found out we were having twins. And we were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And so we were already inching toward our businesses coming together. I'm so grateful that we did, because Gabriel also has a very a beautiful background in spirituality and spiritual practitioner. He, a lot of his foundation was from Agape International Spiritual Center in Los Angeles. And it just made sense. And so for us, when we really sat, I remember we were sitting in the backyard and I was pregnant and we're tuning in, and we already had Ascension Academy Light, but we said, okay, again, we said, what would you have us do with this? Because we could feel it was big. And they said, we really want you to guide people through these stages of awakening. And then there comes all these other like A words drop down, like alignment. And then ascension was the last, right? But it was like awakening, alignment, activation, attunement, all these A words started dropping in. And then ascension was the last. And they said, because at some point in the very near future, there's going to be this process of ascension where it's not just humanity, it's the whole, it's the collective consciousness. And this is what we're seeing now. And so people, I think, are starting to ask bigger questions, to be like, that doesn't really fit, or I feel like I put myself on the back burner, or maybe I have done a job that, and I believe, like what you said, I really believe people do know when they're meant for bigger things, or they know. And I think we all come in with that. I don't think it's just exclusive to a handful of people. I think it's everybody. I think that the light is just as bright in every single person as anyone else. It's just a matter of, are you willing to live that? Are you willing to take the risks that are necessary? Are you willing to step outside when everybody else is doing the normal thing, right? Like I remember doing a physiotherapy practicum in high school. And I was like, if I have to ask somebody to do this one more time, I'm going to lose it, and it caused me to start thinking outside the box. And I was like, okay, but we're doing all the right things, but why aren't they healing? What's really happening? And I think we have to live courageously. I think it's okay for us to think outside the box and ask bigger questions and listen to that inner call to be like, what is that? Like, what is calling me? What's that inner stir? What's that inner feeling? And sometimes it comes from a place where people are just like, I'm done. Like, I've so had it with this, or life isn't working in this way, or my relationship's not in the state that I want it to be, or my body's not in the state that I want it to be. And that was the thing for Gabriel. Like, we did the whole thing of trying to niche down, and we're like, how do we niche down when people would come to us from all different walks of life, for all different things? And we said, if we're here to be of service, we're here to be of service. And we're not going to close the door to someone because they didn't fit within this little box. I've never been a person to live in a box. Neither has Gabriel. Being from Trinidad, went to school, got a scholarship in, college in the US, then in Los Angeles, then we traveled all over the place. We've never fit into the box. So it's like, why would I make other people fit into a box? I'm like, if you need support and you're willing to grow, and you're willing to just pause for a second and let's kind of unravel a little bit. So that's, I think, the big part. I call it clear the ick and the stick. So it's the stuff that doesn't serve us. And we all have it. We have belief systems. We have our past. There's stuff that just slows us down. And if we could just unravel that for a moment, and it doesn't need to take 10 years. Oh my gosh, the amount of conversations I've had with people, and they're like, yeah, it's been 10 years that I've been in therapy and I'm still tackling that issue, Tara. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, I'm like, we need to have a conversation. I'm like, you could clear that literally within 20 minutes. We could sit down and do one meditation, cleared in 20 minutes. Yeah. And once we're free from that, then we start opening up to this higher version of ourselves, our heart, our soul, the higher self, higher clarity, intuition. And when that starts to come in, life gets really fun, because then you're starting to feel like the chills and the sparkles and the alignment and the like, oh my gosh, like things are just aligning. Things are meant to align. Like we're actually meant to live a really joyful experience here. And if we're not living a joyful experience, I think it's important for us to take a pause and look at that and be like, okay, if I'm not, then let's pause. Instead of me trying to push in all these different ways, let me just pause for a second. It's okay. It's okay to pause and do some internal work, let go, make space, because then we really get to expand. And all that goodness is just there. It's waiting for us. It's waiting for each of us to just step in and be like, here you go. I'll give you everything you need, everything you want. Here you go. But that takes some courage, and it takes some courage to step outside of what everybody else is doing. and sometimes to stand up for, and this is what I love about you. And you and I were saying this the other day, we had a really fun little chat, and just standing for what we believe and standing for what we know to be true. And that might be different than what everybody else is doing. But I find when we do that, we listen more to what we know is our truth, and we live in that direction, you get closer and closer and closer and more aligned and attuned to what you actually came here for. Not what's been layered on you and society's told you what you should do, but what you really came here for.
Yes, that's actually what I wanted to segment into, is because we've been conditioned to be this way. We've been conditioned to ignore our intuition. We've been conditioned to live a bland life that is in alignment with what the powers that be want us to do, right? And that's why most people don't find joy in their everyday activity, is because they've been plugged into a system that they thought they had to buy into, that they continue to just go down the line day after day after day until they can retire. And it's just like, but that system was not meant to bring out the best in you and who you are and how you can serve people. And so there's more of us that are waking up and saying, hey, like, we want to help you live this best life. We want to help you live outside the box and live life on your terms and have, everything that you deserve. And did you know that if you were actually living in alignment with who you are and your soul purpose, that all of the opportunity actually shows up? All of it shows up very, very, very quickly, because that's your highest calling. And the universe is trying to help you move through that. But if you're not doing the work to move through it, if you're not healing the stuff that has kept you stuck or traumatized throughout that thing, then you're not going to be able to move through. And here's another really, a really interesting point that you made. You talked about pain or people working through stuff in therapy. And both you and I know that you can navigate through that a lot faster than talk therapy for years and years and years and years and years, right? I remember looking at and learning about the emotion code and like, oh my gosh, all this subconscious stuff I was hanging on to. And what's really interesting is a lot of the times in our lives, pain will reflect actually emotion. We talked about the chakras and Reiki and all that kind of stuff. And I remember the first time I was having a ton of pain in my shoulder, like so much pain. And this was a reoccurring injury for me. I thought, okay, for the rest of my life, I'm going to deal with this injury. This is just how it is. And I remember going to treatment with a really great physiotherapist. And this is an important lesson to learn, is to find people who are actually healers, not people that got a job doing a profession, but people that are actually healers and go in and can help you move through that. Because we did treatments for, I think, 6 weeks and nothing was really improving. It was just like really painful. I would cry in the sessions. I'm like, this is so hard. And then one day I go in and he goes, I don't think that this is physical. He goes, tell me about your shoulder. Tell me when it started hurting. Tell me a little bit more. And I stopped and I was like, I got to call my counselor. And he's like, okay, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, when I was in high school, like my first long-term boyfriend was abusive. And I didn't tell anybody that. I don't think I've told anybody that. Like my whole life, I hadn't told anybody that up until this point. And I said, there was one point that I was trying to leave his house and he wouldn't let me leave his house. And he threw me into the closet and I hurt my shoulder. And I remember like days upon days upon days of it like aching and like being hard for me to write, but I didn't tell anybody. And so I healed from that injury. But every time stress came up in my life, guess what happened to my shoulder? My shoulder went out. And then I started looking back and I was like, every instance in my life where I was stressed out, it happened again. And so now that pain has become a very, very significant reminder for me, because I don't feel stressed like most people. I will breeze through it. I'll push through it. I'm just like, I'm on a train, right? And so that pain means something else than just physical pain in my body. It is a time to reflect when that happens. And when you learn that your body is just trying to tell you how to become in alignment and how to bump you in the right direction, all of a sudden everything shifts, right? And so do you want to share a little bit about, when you created this, who are the type of people that come to see you? Who are the type of people, like, what are people usually seeking when they come to talk to you?
Yeah, it starts with usually one of 4 areas. It usually will start with something physical happens, like there's some sort of physical breakdown, and they've been to all the different specialists, all the different doctors. And I've sat on panels with doctors and surgeons and all sorts of things talking about energy work and Reiki, and people were like, whoa, and so there's always the path. And this is what I found, was that people will start at different places, but the direction always leads to energy. And so Gabriel and I, we have this saying, we say, go energy. At some point along the journey, everybody's got to go energy, because just like you said, it will always come back to where that initial thing first started. And I want to circle back to that for a moment, but so one of four areas, people will come because there's a physical breakdown. Second is relationship breakdown. People will have something happen. Either relationship to self is not where they want it to be, or relationship in their parents, their children, their spouse, something's, even coworkers, bosses, we get a lot of those, that something's not right. And they want to make it better because they want to have a great experience. They want to be happy in their relationships. They want it to be harmonious. They don't want to carry around all this resentment and stuff between people. The third area is definitely manifestation. So when people feel that their life just isn't working, they're like, I've done all the things, but I want a better life. So I want to learn about this thing called manifestation. What do you think about the law of attraction? And so it's really fun because that opens up a whole other conversation of what we call conscious creation. And so we have these like abundance accelerators, and they're so much fun because it's all energy. I said, so this is going to take you beyond law of attraction. We're going to go into the pure energetics around money and finances and abundance, like true energetics. And then the last area is all the realm of spirituality. People get curious. They're like, tell me about this intuition thing. I'm starting to pick up on things. I'm empathic, or they'll be like, tell me about meditation. I really want to deepen my spiritual practice. And these were the four areas that people kept coming to us, because it's been, for me, I'm coming up to 21 years since I started my business. And those were the four areas. And the same thing for Gabriel. We sat down, he had his notepad, I had my notepad, and we said, what are the areas that people come to you most for? And there were 6 areas, and we had 4 that were exactly the same. Wow. So we said, these are the 4 that we're going to really focus on. And I want to come back to the conversation that you were having, because the body remembers. Like our cells remember, your energetics remember, your chakra system remembers. And so if we're not clearing out those things that have happened, be it traumas, past, whatever people want to call them, if we're not clearing that out, we carry it with us, and then we layer. And so we start to live from the layers. We think that we're living from our true self, but we're actually living from the layers. And then we intersect with other people, and then we're like, I don't know why I keep hitting up against this thing. And we're like, because you're living from the layers. So if we start to peel back the layers and we give the body time to speak, we give your emotions room to just breathe for a second, and then allow it to let go. The body wants to let go. The body does not want to hold that stuff, but things that are important, our mind will be like, and the ego goes, oh, this was a very, very intense thing. This was very traumatic. And especially if we relive it, it almost locks it in, saying this was important. So now you have to keep that. So it'll put it in our body until we go, actually, no, like I'm conscious enough now to know I don't want to keep it. And that's what happened for me, was that I started to realize I was watching people, even in massage, because I used to do massage and reflexology, aromatherapy. And I would notice that people would start to have these massive awakenings and things like clearing out faster than if they were going to regular massage or doing the regular things. And it caused me to start asking the question, like, what's happening here? And every time the answer was energy. Because the energy would go in and heal the root. It would get right to the root of wherever it was and release it from the body. And the body goes, oh, thank God, I don't have to carry this around anymore. Thank you. And it's free.
Isn't that interesting? Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you on over 20 years of business, because most businesses don't make it past 3. Okay. And the other thing is, in that process, I think it's so interesting to find pain as a guide. Hold on just a sec.
Yeah.
Got some noisiness going on right now. Of course, when you work from home, this is what happens, and we're in a condo until we have our house. But when you look at pain as an indicator of something that isn't working in your life, like it's really interesting to me now that I'm so in tune with clearing energy and have people that help me do that. If I have a stabbing pain in my back, I know it's curse energy. Like I know it's somebody stabbing. Isn't that interesting? And
or people just even having judgment thoughts, because people don't realize they could have judgment thoughts, envy thoughts, jealousy thoughts, and it's literally like a dagger of energy that goes to that person, and you feel it. And then if you're aware of the energetics, then you can be like, okay, let me just clear that out. Like, I'm going to send you love. I send you so much love, wherever it's coming from. I always send everything love. And I've seen some pretty like shadow dense things. And I always send love, because even the densest of consciousness, like when people are coming from judgment or pain or deliberately, attacking people, it's a call for healing, first of
It
all, because
is.
there's
It
something
is.
off. So there's a call for healing. And so from that perspective, like, what can I do as an intuitive healer? Well, I can send love. I can send energy. I can send light. And then you release and you let go. You don't carry it. You don't keep talking about it. You actually let it go. And then wherever it needs to go, that light and energy will be carried there. And someone will have, wherever it's coming from, they'll have a little boost. Something will shift. Always.
Always. And I think I think that as a piece of that in the process, when you start to recognize these things, you can start to heal yourself, right? Like, so often people go through life, and I know that this is a common, like, kind of basic conversation, but people go through life and they think this is how things are, and they maybe hold resentment for things that have happened to them in the past or in their childhood, and they don't realize that it's their responsibility to heal themselves. Like, they're probably not going to get an apology, they're probably not going to be able to go back and make things right, but it's their responsibility to move through that and become wholehearted in their own life, in their own body. One of the pieces that you talked about was manifestation. I love that you called it conscious creation. I think that is so brilliant. But for those people that are out there, I use the word manifestation. Actually, Izzy and I are about to hop in. One of my clients is a manifesting coach, and she did a really cool mini course, how to manifest $1,000 in 30 days.
I love it.
So Izzy and I are going to go do that together, because I want to start teaching her those things now. But for those people out there that believe that manifestation is a bit woo-woo, right? Like, because, okay, well, that can be a bit like fluffy. I remember thinking, I need to work harder. It's not about manifesting, it's about working harder, but it's because I wasn't in alignment with what I was doing. And so do you want to talk a little bit about what you believe manifestation is, and how you see it evolve in people's lives?
Yeah. So we're creating all the time. We're always creating. You're creating by your thoughts, by your emotions, by your energy, by something that you put focus on. And so we're literally sending out waves. They're like frequency. It's like the radio. If you're listening to the radio, there's waves coming from a radio tower somewhere. You're doing the same thing. So by your intention, by your thoughts, by your emotions, especially big emotions, happy or not so happy, but big emotions carry a bigger frequency. And that's going out into the field that we call, some people call it the quantum, the cosmic field. It's an energy, it's plasma, it's the ether, right? You've got air, earth, fire, water, ether. It's the ether. So it's going out, and then it's creating an influence. Just like if you were to play a bell, a really high-pitched bell, you might even feel it, because there's an energy wave that comes and you're like, whoa, I feel that. Or a drum. Like, I have my djembe, and I love playing djembe because of the frequency. It's just like so bassy. And I love that earth energy, and you can feel it in your body. So it's creating an experience. We're creating experiences all the time. And so manifesting is you being able to take the creator given, the divine given powers that we all have, that you all have, and you set the intention. You get very clear, you get very focused, and you start to put to work these universal laws that say what I focus on expands. What I put out there comes back. That's the law of reciprocity and the law of correspondence. So if I can hold a frequency or hold a thought or hold an emotion, send out the wave comes back. It's like if I throw a stone in the water, the ripples eventually come back to me. It doesn't matter how far out I throw it, the ripples will eventually come back to me. That's manifesting. We can manifest a lot. The next level from that is creating. And this is where you start to tap into your higher energy. You start tapping into frequency. You really start tapping into, like, what is the divine creating through me? Because I still manifest. Like, I love manifesting because it's fun. It's playful. It's like, let's create something. Let's, like,
it's an experiment, right?
Right?
It's your experiment with the field.
Totally. And it's so much fun. And then creating is really this dance between you and the divine, whatever you call that, right? Spirit, source, creator, God, the infinite source, universe. That's you playing a bigger game now. You're dancing with the divine. You're letting that higher energy come through, and you get these waves of inspiration where you're like, oh, and you get inspired too, right? So you're like, I didn't just think that, like, that literally moved me. And Gabriel, and I'll show you the difference. So I really wanted to make a big impact. So I said to Spirit, I will serve as many that will come. And that has happened. Like, there was at one point, I've worked with it's well over about 14,000 clients, one-to-one. So it's a lot of one-on-one sessions. And at one point I had 30 one-on-one sessions a week, and most of them were 90 minutes. Wow. And it was like, I was on fire. I also had a network marketing business at the time. So things were like moving. And I said to my friend at this exact time, I said, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be fun? I would love to see $9,884 in my bank account by the end of this month. And we were like, I had no idea how that was going to happen. I just I literally manifested the thought, the energy, and I was like, let's go. In that time frame, I had a client refer another client. She happened to write for City Post in Toronto. And she calls me up and she says, hey, I got your name from a friend. I really would love to write an article on you, but I'd love to come in for a session first. Would you be open? If I love the session, then we'll do a trade. Like I'll write the article for you. And she goes, and if I don't like the session, then I'll just pay you for it. And I said, sure. I was like, let's go for it. I had no problem. I was like, let's go for it. Full confidence. And so I walked into the session. It was amazing. It was awesome. She wrote the most beautiful, like 5-page, 6-page article for me. It was incredible. It gives me chills on my head. Like it was so beautiful. And within that time that it got published, I had over 80 messages and emails within 6 days for new clients coming in. It was the busiest month I had ever had. Wow. And at the end of that month, I looked at my bank account and sure enough, the deposits that went in were $9,884. And I was like, oh my God, this was like 13 years ago. So like that money at that time was huge for me, right?
Yeah,
now, here's where creation steps in though. When you start consciously creating and you're creating in a different way, I never put on a board that I wanted to speak in front of like millions of people. Never thought it, never put it on a board, never had a conversation about it. And yet somehow, by the grace of all things working together, Gabriel and I ended up in India on a stage. We were invited to speak about meditation. There were 26 million people there.
Wow.
I was like, how did I get there? Right? You know, you think about those things and you're like,
funny.
I didn't manifest that. Like I did not actively manifest that, but yet it happened. And it was so beautiful. And that's where I know that there's a higher energy that's always at play. And when you're dancing with, I call it dancing with the divine. When you're dancing with the divine, it's like, here you go, here you go, here you go, here you go. And it just starts flowing. And you're like, okay, great. Okay, great. And it's so amazing. And you look back at your life and you go, can you believe we just did that? Right? Like I couldn't have planned that. Right?
Yeah. So you can't pay for that. You can't pay for that to put yourself in that position, right? And isn't that interesting when you're dancing with the divine, right? That this flow state starts to show up and all like dream jobs have shown up for me and connections with people I never would have met before, right? Like I never would have met you had I not put myself out in this position, right? Like, and so all of these things, they're not to be ignored. They're not coincidences. They're breadcrumbs in your life that are tying all the pieces together.
Yeah.
I think that is so magical. When I think of manifestation, I think of having absolute gratitude for where you are right now and giving extreme action towards what you want and moving towards what you want. Because often people will think, well, okay, I have to meditate and I have to pray and I have to, do all these things in my mind to manifest. But the truth is like, we're constantly doing that. Like you said, everything that we have in life is a manifestation of what our mind has created. And so once you realize that, you start getting a lot more diligent about exactly what you are thinking at all times and what is allowed to live rent-free in your head and what is not. Right.
And those practices, they're the things that prepare you. So it's kind of like when someone's preparing a space, right? And they're like, I'm going to prepare the space for guests to arrive. That's you preparing the space. Meditation is you preparing your mental space, making space, right? Doing the internal cleanup. That's you making space so that you can house more of those ideas so that when you are actively manifesting, it could be so easy and so joyful and so freeing that you're just like, oh, that'd be fun, and then all of a sudden things start to magically happen, right? Yeah.
It's so cool. And like I said before, it's an experiment with the field. What you put out, like if you are sitting there hoping and wishing and praying that you get something, you don't get what you wish for. You get who you are. Right? You get who you are and how you show up and your intention when you go out and do things. And that pivots over time, that adjusts course over time. Just like you thought you were going this way and then you get bumped in this direction, right? Like you thought you're going to be a chiropractor and then like, no, this is the way. This is how you're going to help way more people move through and to the light if you go this way. And those, again,
and none of it made sense. That's
No,
the thing. None of it made sense.
you never know how it's going to happen.
All signs were pointing to, this is what you should do.
Sure.
And I'm like, but that doesn't, and like, they're like, how are you going to make I remember my parents being like, how are you going to make a living being a what now? A healer? They thought that I was becoming a part of a cult, like all sorts of ideas. They were like, Reiki, what are you talking about? Like all these weird things, right? And I'm like, I don't know. I just got to follow this. And after doing that enough times, now my parents just know. They're like, there she goes. We just know it's going to be great, right? Because when you do that enough times,
yes, they trust
you feel that current and things do just work out. You're like, I expect them to work out now. I just know when I get that call, I go because I know it's going to be amazing. But that takes a lot of courage, especially the first couple times when people are stepping into something very different. You have to have faith and you got to have some courage. It's great when you have other people around you to have these conversations and be like, hey, it's okay. It's awesome. Follow that flow. It's going to be great. You're going to be great, you know?
And you need those people in your life. If you do not have them in your life, yes, you need to find them now, because I was the same way. I actually went to university for music. I started singing when I was 7. I started singing competitively when I was 7. And so
oh my gosh, I'm going to have to hear you sing. I'm going to have to hear you sing sometimes. So great.
And it's so interesting because I don't really do it anymore. And it was like this big traumatic thing when I quit, because I felt like I was giving up on a dream. I thought that I was giving up on everything. And for many, many years, I was like, why didn't you, but I also was raised in a family and like in an environment in school where there was a fixed mindset, right? Like I just thought I was just this good. I didn't believe in myself enough to become this good and to be able to move forward this way, right? Like that was all development, but it depends on who you're spending time with. And that's why I think who you surround yourself with is like probably one of the most imperative things that you will do in your entire lifetime. And to be like very diligent about that. Women especially, we have this guilt complex that if we're friends with somebody or we have to work with somebody, that we have to like make everybody happy and include everybody because that's what we were taught when we grew up. But actually you need to protect your personal energy to be able to thrive in who you're becoming, and only keep people in your wheelhouse, like in your very close inner circle, that are cheering you on no matter what, that truly have your results and who you are at the core. And it's been really interesting to come into coaching, because I now, like, I've worked people out of my business. I met them through affiliate marketing, and they worked on my team, and now I've worked them out of my business because I saw what their purpose was. I'm like, you're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be here doing this. And when you start to see life that way, to serve other people with your gifts, just like you know how to ask better questions, you know how to get to the root of people's trauma, you know how to help them move through those challenges and create something on the other side, you're consciously helping them create their belief over here that's going to help them grow the next chapter of their life that they may or may not have done, whether you were in their life or not, right? Like that's imperative to have people that are behind you doing this. And I see you guys do that so well.
Yeah, I think it's important. And I think it's important to raise families like that too,
yes,
to be very mindful and open and awake and ask bigger questions, and don't just believe whatever, and it's great to have community where you can have those conversations too, to say, what do you think about that? What's your experience? Because that's what we all came here for. I mean, we're all unique, amazing beings with unique constitutions. So we're all going to have a unique perspective. And I think it's so important to be able to say, wow, tell me more about your life. Like, what's your experience, And then we get to have, and you go, whoa. And it's not about comparing or judgment or criticizing or wishing that you're just like, wow, you came in as this fantastic, right? And you find these points where you connect on a whole other level. It's not just, I remember back in the day, I used to love go out and drink at the bars. And it was like, you'd have your bar friends, your bar buddies, that you knew you could go out drinking with, but that was the only place that you really connected, when it came to like the deep conversations, the big conversations, the heartaches where your boyfriend left and you're like, oh my God, I need to talk to somebody. And you're like, I can't call my bar buddies because they're just going to be like, let's go drinking.
Let's go to the bar.
So I think it's important to be able to have those really deep conversations with the people around you, but also to instill that in families and kids too, to say, it's okay. Like, this is challenging and let's have a conversation about that. Or what do you need? And just be open and show up for people. And that's really important right now.
Yeah, to be the role model for your kids, especially because nowadays people are scared to have difficult conversations. They're scared of offending
Yeah.
people. They're scared they're going to get in trouble. Like now it's illegal in Canada to call people by the wrong pronouns. God forbid you make a mistake, right? And speaking of the bar days, I definitely had those friends, and I definitely lost those friends when I lost my bar job because they no longer wanted to come see me and get cheap drinks.
That's right.
So you learn over time what
That's
value
right.
is in friendship. But I remember being in this space and thinking, man, like if we could just find someone, and by we, I just mean by like my little community that I had at the time that would have like a bigger conversation about life, about just finding mentors, right? Like I didn't have, other than like school, a lot of people don't have mentorship for their children. And I realized very quickly that, having a daughter that questions everything, that is pretty intelligent, that is, always pushing the line on what's appropriate or not, that if you as a parent can have bigger conversations with them and push the envelope, they understand so much more than you give them credit for. Right, so much more. And I think I told you in the previous conversation that we were talking about how we connect to our kids in different lifetimes, and like Izzy and I've had that conversation one night where she was having a hard time sleeping, and I put meditation music in her ears, and she just started having this like subconscious conversation with me, talking to me about, hey mom, like, do you remember that time that we knew each other before? And I'm like, hey, I just got curious, like, hey, when was that time before? And she's like, well, remember when I was your mom? Do you remember that time? And I was like, I don't remember it, Izzy, but I feel it. I know, like, I feel it. And she's like, yeah, that was just so awesome that we got to do that together. And I'm just so happy to see, I'm gonna get emotional. I'm just so happy to see you again in this lifetime, And when we allow our kids to have these bigger conversations, Jordan Peterson, people either love him or hate him. I think he's like, he delivers information sometimes quite harshly, but he's got, one of the brightest philosophical minds in Canada that I can think of, that is pretty even. And, he talks about your kids wanting a really great relationship with you. He talks about letting your kids do dangerous things carefully. And he said, if you think other people are boring, like so many people don't go out and just talk to people and listen. He's like, you just don't know how to listen to people. Anytime I've actually sat down and heard someone else's story, where they're at in their life, their relationships, what they're trying to build, what they're excited about, like, people ask me all the time, like, how do you connect with people on social media? Because it's just like a text, right? And I was like, if you care about learning somebody's story or who they are as a human, you ask different questions than if you're trying to sell them something.
That's right.
Right.
100%.
And that's what this is about. It's about a bigger mission. Of course, we get paid for our services and we're good at what we do because we study, right? But in the same sense, if you're not out there for the greater good of other humans, it can be a really challenging conversation. And so the same thing goes with our kids. Like sometimes, we've been raised in this authoritative state where, kids have to obey us and do what we tell them to do. But like, why can't they question you? Why can't they question that maybe you're operating in trauma from generations past? Why can't they question, if you've made a snap answer? Because all the time we'll say no to our kids before we say yes, right? Just like in sales, people say no before they say yes. But like, why can't they question those things? Why can't other people question you and have a conversation? I've definitely had people do that. And instead of offense, how about we learn? How about we grow? Absolutely. How about we have, respectful, loving, compassionate conversations? And that if you and I are on opposite sides of the coin, that we walk away still believing what we believe, but respectfully coming together and saying, at least we had the courage to try. And at least we had the courage to have a conversation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a really powerful conversation, because when people pass to the other side, I've had the privilege, I would call it, to talk to a lot of people who have passed. And one of the things that they always say when they come back, they say, you're going to review the whole thing. And you're not just going to review it from your perspective. Every single person you intersect with, you get a full 360-degree experience of what that exchange and interaction was. So you're not only seeing from your life perspective, you're seeing from every interaction and what that person felt and what that person's experience was, the whole thing. And I'm like, whoa, that would feel big and overwhelming. And they're like, you can handle it. They're like, you can handle it. Your energy, you can handle it. And they said, if you can start to do that now, it not only makes for a better human experience for you, you start showing up in a different way where Yes, you're going to get your needs met. Yes, you're here to create your life, your version of heaven, bliss, joy on earth, whatever that is for you. But you start thinking bigger than just the individual I. We start thinking from, wow, like, how could I make this entire experience better? How can I make decisions that are great for the whole? And this is something I've done since I was like 18. I remember, I don't even know where it came in from, but it was, I surrendered to the divine will. Show me what to do today, or show me what's in the highest and best good for all. What's in the highest and best good for all. When I lead from that, I don't ever question a decision that I'm making. I don't ever question anything that's going on, because I know I've already set that intention. My energy is in a sound place, and I know it will create the greatest waves of evolution and elevation for everyone, because it's no fun if I'm the only one that's like going through this elevated path and I'm sitting on the mountaintop and I'm like, do now what? Like, you're going to want friends to play with, you know, you're going to want people to have conversation with. So this is why it helps to take into consideration the whole. And I really feel like this is where humanity is getting back to now. We're starting to have our eyes peeled back. We're starting to see. And then from the chaos and this stuff that's going on, we're like, okay, what can we do? How can we raise awareness? How can we make better decisions? Just like people will say to your children, is this the best choice that you can make? Are we making the best choices as adults, right? Like, we had our kids reflect this back today. They're like, we're going to swap today. And I said, what do you mean we're going to swap today? They said, we're going to be the adults and do whatever we want, and you and dad have to be the kids. Gabriel and I were like, sure, let's do that. So then just a perspective shift, right? So all of a sudden they said, well, what do parents do? We know you work, but what else do you do? And I'm like, okay, well, we do the dishes, we fold the laundry, we clean up the house, we make the meals, we attend to every need that you have, plus we homeschool. And I said, so here's a list of all the things, right? And then I said, as we stepped into the kid role, I said, well, what do you want me to do? They were like, go do whatever you want. I said, all right, well, I'm going to go lay down on a bunch of cushions and I'm going to have a nap. And they're like, okay, whatever you want. And you could hear them out in the kitchen doing the dishes, folding the laundry. The twins have never folded laundry. Okay. They folded the laundry, they went and put it away. And we had this really cool perspective shift. And I could hear them talking to each other too. And they were like, well, the kids can do whatever. They can do whatever they want. And because we'll say that sometimes, right? We give them full freedom. We don't have a lot of rules. And they said, well, what are the rules today? And they're talking as if they're adults. And they said, the only rule is you have to be kind to each other. So that's what they reflected back to us. And we were like, okay,
that's good rule.
Great. Like, they're getting it, you know? And so I think there's higher conversations that are happening. And I think that we model them for society, but we also model them for our kids. And I think that when we start to do that internal work and we start to show up differently and be consistent in that, they hear it, they see it. It gives them space to grow. It gives them space to be who they are. And then we get to have a much happier experience together.
And they feel like they're a part of it. Right? They actually feel like they're a part of it. And that's something that, you know, we've talked to Izzy about, because moving countries and moving away from family was a big decision. And we started, she was only 5 at the time. So we started by saying, we're going for a couple of weeks, then we'll be here till Christmas, then we'll be here till your birthday. And we were also making decisions in real time during that time. And so one of the things that we said to her, even at that age, is that we will always take into consideration your feelings. We will always take into consideration what you want. Now we're going to do what's best for our family. We're going to talk about the pros and the cons and explain it to you. You're going to be allowed to ask questions and debate us on that. That's totally fine. But to make her feel like a valid member of the family and decision-making process, I think is really important, because she's her own soul. Like, this girl, I'm going to tell you, she's going to be doing what we're doing very quickly, you know, and helping people around her. But if you don't empower your kids to become conscious, and you don't empower your kids to become who they are and who they're meant to be, and instead you think, okay, well, you got to go to school and get good grades, just like we had to go to school and get good grades. Like, we are raising our kids in a different world than we grew up in.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
And so right now, for me, and I know for you, it's the family unit, the family values, how we can do life together, how we can support each other long term, how we can grow together as a family. One of the things that I loved about my husband when I first met him, I was always doing personal development. I was always growing, and it wasn't so much of a practice for him, even though he was aware of those things. It just, other things took priority. And when we got together, he's like, I'm not willing to grow, to have you grow without me. I'm willing to do the work because
Wow.
I want to grow with you, because if we don't grow together, we'll inevitably grow apart, right?
Yeah.
And so it's consciously having those conversations with not only your partner, but your
Mhm.
kids and the people around you. And, and I said before, it's important to have people that are like-minded and
Mhm.
supporting you, but it's also important to be able to manage your emotions and be around people that are not like you, right? In a
Mhm.
world that is full of conflict and divide,
Mhm.
it's really important to realize that the only thing that you are responsible for is who you are, your emotions, how you
Mhm.
show up, and how you receive other people's
That's right.
information, not necessarily how you affect everybody else. Because we all think what we do is so
Mhm.
outward, right? We think it's so outward, and like everybody's thinking about us. Everybody's considering what I'm having for lunch today. I know it, right? Everybody was watching that Ryan made Big Mac tacos
Yeah.
last night, and they were amazing. Okay, but they don't care. They don't care. And when you realize that this whole life journey is yours alone, and you get to consciously create whatever you
Mhm.
want, the world shifts for you, and you
Totally.
get around like-minded people that'll help you feed that
Mhm.
intuition, help you feed your gifts, right? Help you build the life that you want, because it's not normal. We weren't put
Yeah.
in a society that told us that this was okay. We were put in one that wanted to keep us in a box. And
Mhm.
now that box has all these different colors and all these different
Mhm.
flavors, and everybody wants a voice. And my whole thing is, if you want to be known, if you want your name to be out there, you want to be different, go do something worthwhile. Go cure cancer, go cure, find renewable energy, go help people around the globe, go speak in front of 26 million people and teach them how to meditate and heal themselves, right? Like, go do
Exactly.
something of significance in this world instead of just being a loud yelling voice because you want attention. And that's exactly what you guys have created. You guys have created a beautiful community. I know you've got tons of people in your community that are thinking like you, that are creating that ripple effect. Because what's the beautiful thing when you embrace this life is that you may stand here, but all of these droplets in the water around you are also radiating ripples, and you get to
Mhm.
have this massive wave that goes out from your center. And so, Tara, I would just first of all like to thank you so much for being here. You are amazing. I'm so grateful for you and your friendship. But is there anything you want to leave people with? And I also want you to tell them where they can find you.
Yeah. Well, I feel called to say that even the most challenging situations, relationships, if you are doing that internal work and you're showing up in a way that you really love, you'll actually find that even the most challenging situations, challenging relationships, they evolve right before your eyes. They show up
Yeah.
differently. All of a sudden, people that normally you're like, might actually open because you have done so much of that internal conscious work yourself, that even the most crazy situations can somehow magically, beautifully dissolve, resolve, and show up in a completely different way around you. And so this is where life gets really, really beautiful, because you start realizing that I am emanating the energy that creates the ripple that comes back. You are creating your ripple that comes back. And the more you become conscious of who you are, what you're embodying, and the ripple that you're sending out, this is where stuff starts to get really fun. And even if there's a trigger, that trigger is there to help everyone grow. It's not for you to take on someone else's trigger. If I'm triggered, that's my growth point.
Yeah.
If someone else gets triggered by me, that's not my responsibility. I can love you. I can send light. I can give you tools. I can support you. But whoever the trigger is with, that's that person's personal growth. If we could all start doing that, there'd be less blaming and shaming and finger pointing. There'd be so much more spiritual responsibility. And I feel like that's where humanity can make a huge quantum leap. Just in that simple thing. Like, if I'm triggered, I'm triggered. It's not even about you. Thank you for serving to trigger something within me so that I can grow, right? If we could all just do that simple thing, man, the whole experience here would be so much more easy and beautiful and loving. And I would say the best place to find us would be, oh gosh, there's many places, but I would say we're on Facebook most of the time, to be honest.
Okay.
I still love Facebook. I enjoy it for what it is. So we're on Facebook. We have an amazing group that's there called Academy of Light. So it's just facebook.com/groups/Academy of Light, and or the Academy of Light. And that's where we hang out most of the time. That's where we are. And
Awesome.
so thank you so much for having
Awesome.
me. So great
pleasure,
to
my
connect
friend.
with you.
You are amazing. Thank you for bringing your energy and your knowledge and your wisdom and your light to my podcast, to my community. I am forever grateful that we were connected, and I'm so looking forward to watching you grow for the rest, I was gonna say for the rest of the year, but like really for the rest of your life, like what you create and how you ripple out. Like, thank you again so much for being here. Okay, you guys, it was so lovely to have Tara on today. I'll be back again next week with your Beyond Balance podcast, how to live a life beyond the balance most people seek. And we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.